I work as a night security guard for a museum. It's a boring job. 8 hours of walking the same 4 hallways, checking the same 22 doors, and making sure the motion sensors haven't tripped. The rule is simple. If a sensor goes off in a wing where no one should be, you don't go in alone. You call the main office and wait for the second guard. For 6 months, the museum was a tomb. Quiet, cold, just me and the statues. Then the statues started moving. Not a lot, just a few inches. I'd walk past the Greek wing at 1 a.m., and the marble figure of a weeping woman would have her head tilted slightly to the left. I'd come back at 3 a.m., and she'd be tilted to the right. I figured it was the building settling. I'm a rational man. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in old foundations and bad plumbing. But on Tuesday, the movement stopped being subtle. I was doing my rounds in the Gallery of Ancients. I walked past a large obsidian statue of a hooded figure. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. I'd seen it 1,000 times. But as I passed, I heard something. A footstep. One heavy, stone-on-stone thump. I stopped. I turned around. The statue was exactly where it had been for 100 years. Perfectly still. I kept walking. Thump. I stopped again. I turned. The statue hadn't moved, but it was closer. It was now 3 feet closer to the center of the room. Its hooded face was tilted down, staring at the floor. I didn't call the office. I didn't want to look like a fool. I walked back to the entrance, my heart beating a little faster. I looked back one last time. The statue was gone. I spent the next hour sprinting through the halls, checking every room. Every time I turned a corner, I heard it. Thump. It was following me. Not running, just one step every time I looked away. By 4 a.m., I was trapped in the security office, the heavy steel door locked tight. I sat there, staring at the monitors. The cameras showed the halls were empty. Nothing moved. I started to laugh. I really did. I thought I was losing my mind. I leaned back in my chair and sighed, staring at the screen. Then I noticed something on the monitor for the hallway right outside my door. The statue was there. It was standing perfectly still just outside the door. But it wasn't looking at the door. It was looking at the camera. And it was holding something. A set of keys. My keys. The ones I'd left on the desk in the lobby 3 hours ago. Slowly, the statue lifted the keys and slid them into the lock of the security door. I heard the click. The lock turned. The door didn't open immediately. It just stayed cracked. An inch of darkness peering through. And from that gap, a voice, cold, heavy, and sounding like grinding stones, whispered, "You forgot to lock the door behind you."
The house didn't come with a basement, but it had an attic that felt like it belonged to another century. When I moved in, the previous owner, a woman who had lived there for 50 years, left a single piece of advice scribbled on a sticky note taped to the hallway mirror. Don't answer the echo. At first, I thought it was just the eccentricity of the elderly. Old houses have noises. They settle. They groan. They breathe. But after a month, I noticed a pattern. Whenever I dropped something in the kitchen, the sound didn't just bounce off the walls. There was a delay, a second, fainter sound that echoed from the ceiling. Not a reflection of the noise, but a mimicry of it. If I coughed, the attic coughed back. 3 seconds later, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was an acoustic anomaly, a quirk of the architecture. But then, the echo started changing. It stopped waiting for me to make a sound. One Tuesday night, while I was reading in bed, I heard a clear, distinct sound from the floorboards directly above me. I froze. I live alone. I waited, holding my breath, listening to the silence of the room. Then, from the ceiling, came the sound of a voice. It wasn't a scream or a moan. It was my own voice. It sounded exactly like me, but the cadence was off, stilted, like someone learning to speak for the first time. It whispered my name. David. I didn't answer. I remembered the note. Don't answer the echo. For a week, The thing in the attic played a game of psychological warfare. It would mimic the sound of my alarm clock at 3 a.m. It would mimic the sound of my front door opening, making me sprint to the hallway only to find the lock still bolted. It was learning. It was studying the sounds of my life. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday. I was exhausted, drifting off to sleep, when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in an empty house. The sound of a child sobbing. Not a mimicry. A genuine, heartbreaking cry for help, coming from the attic hatch in the ceiling. My resolve broke. I didn't think about the note. I didn't think about the logic of a hidden child in a house I'd thoroughly inspected. I just felt a surge of desperate empathy. I climbed the pull-down ladder into the attic. It was cold, smelling of old paper and damp wood. The sobbing was louder here, coming from behind a stack of old trunks. "Hello," I called out. "Are you okay? Where are you?" The sobbing stopped instantly. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then, a voice responded from behind the trunks. But it wasn't a child's voice. It was mine. Not a mimicry this time. It was my exact voice, perfectly pitched, perfectly timed. "Hello," the voice asked. "Are you okay? Where are you?" I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. As I turned to leave, the voice spoke again. But it didn't mimic me this time. It spoke a truth. "Thank you for answering," it whispered. "It's been so long since I had a way out." I felt a cold hand grip my ankle from beneath the floorboards. I didn't scream, because as I opened my mouth to let out a cry, I realized I couldn't make a sound. The sound didn't come from my throat. The scream came from the voice behind the trunks. And as I looked down at my own reflection in a dusty mirror leaning against the wall, I saw that my reflection wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was smiling, and it was the only one of us who could still speak.